إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهدي الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله أما بعد أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون يا أيها الناس اتقوا ربكم الذي خلقكم من نفس واحدة وخلق منها زوجها وبث منهما رجالا كثيرا ونساء واتقوا الله الذي تساءلون به والأرحام إن الله كان عليكم رقيبا يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله وقولوا قولا سديدا يصلح لكم أعمالكم ويغفر لكم ذنوبكم ومن يطع الله ورسوله فقد فاز فوزا عظيما أما بعد فإن أصدق الحديث كتاب الله وخير الهدي هدي محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم وشر الأمور محدثاتها وكل محدثة بدعة وكل بدعة ضلالة وكل ضلالة في النار أما بعد رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وينفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما يا ذا الجلال والإكرام السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. Today in our 10th part, actually I think it's the 11th part. Is it 10? We're doing Al-Fatiha. Now this is a natural progression after the scientific benefits of Salah and the spiritual benefits of Salah. The next most important thing to complete our Salah is the Fatiha. But as we'll see, the Fatiha is the greatest cure that the human heart needs and that human beings and the Ummah needs. And Al-Fatiha has got so many benefits that the book we're dealing with is called Al-Fatiha, the spiritual cure, but it doesn't do justice to all the benefits and the value in Al-Fatiha, so I decided to call it the universal cure. The book we're doing is a summary of all the major tafsirs of the Qur'an, Ibn Kathir, At-Tabari, Jalalain, Ibn Qayyim. So all the famous tafsirs is what we're discussing in this series, inshallah. So today we're going to start with a famous saying by Euripides. Euripides is a famous Greek philosopher who lived about 3,000 years ago. And what he said is that the best and safest thing is to keep a balance in your life. Acknowledge the great powers around us and in us. So 3 advices he's giving us: to keep a balance in life, to acknowledge the power or the powers around us, and the powers within us. And he says if you can do that and live that way, you are really a wise man. Now this is obviously easier said than done, but let's start first with this topic of balance. And when we deal with balance, we have to discuss something called entropy. We have discussed it previously, but we're going to go over it again. And basically entropy is a scientific law. I know. Oh, okay. Oh, you can't see, sorry. Okay. Fine? Fine. Okay. So entropy is a concept in physics, and basically what it says is that all matter and energy declines into disorder naturally. So if you look at it in the physical world, if you don't pull the weeds out of your garden, it becomes overgrown. If you don't clean your clothes regularly, they become spoiled. If you don't look after your body, you lose shape. If you leave food outside, it spoils. And like that, you can think everything in nature and in matter, or rather in matter and energy, it declines into disorder naturally. Now, if we understand it, like Sheikh Hamza Yusuf says, then what we'll realize is that the world is designed to break your heart. And I'll say your material heart or your physical heart. Because the car you buy now, next year it's old. And it doesn't give you that same pleasure. The watch or any kind of thing, the clothing you buy, the shoe you buy, it's new now, it gives you happiness, and by next year or the following year it wears out. So the nature of the world is it's wearing out, and all of us are wearing out. In fact, Theodore Roosevelt, he said, we either rust out or wear out, and I've chosen to wear out. And unfortunately, most people are just rusting out. But we should wear out because this is the world. In fact, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Kullu man alayha fan. Everything on this earth is bound to disappear, to vanish, to be destroyed. Illa wajhi rabbika dhul jalali wal ikram. Except the countenance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the only thing that is eternal and doesn't come to an end. But what we have to learn is, or understand, is that we can expand energy to maintain balance in our lives. So if you exercise, then you can maintain your health. If you tend to your garden, you can keep it neat. If you wash your clothing, you can keep it from spoiling. But the reality is that the world still, in spite of us expanding energy, is always still leading towards an end, because we've been designed for the next dimension and not this dimension. But in spite of that fact, we as believers, even though we're moving backwards, we always have the opportunity to move upwards. So even though we're moving backwards, by making the right choices, by expanding our energy correctly, we can continue moving upwards, meaning closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then obviously we as Muslims have some hidden power, some secret weapon, which is the barakah and the rahmah that we can draw upon from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in order to assist us. So while everything is tending towards depletion, we can have, for example, everybody has got maybe a shoe or a shirt or a trouser, which in spite of the fact that you wear it so often, it never seems to wear out. This is what barakah is that the thing is filled with more blessings than you expected. And this is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can do for us. So this is as far as balance is concerned, just to understand balance. Now, this looks like a very complicated statement, but when I explain it to you, Steven Pinker, he says the ultimate purpose of life, mind and human striving is to deploy energy and information. That means you should be using all your knowledge and your information to fight back the tide of entropy. That means you should be doing everything in your power to prevent things from sliding into chaos and carve out refuges of beneficial order. That means when we start to create a routine for ourselves, when we start to make the choices that bring harmony within our existence, then we start to stem the tide of entropy. And if we look at the system of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, everything in nature is in perfect harmony and perfect balance. And this is our objective. This is why Kant, Immanuel Kant is a famous German philosopher. He says, act as if the maxim of your action were to become, by your will, a universal law of nature. Meaning, you should act in such a way that your actions always bring balance. And if you can act that way, then you are actually correspondent to the nature of the universe. And in this way, you become correspondent to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's law. And this is how we become famous with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When you are performing things in a way that is correspondent to the way Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does things, then we become close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَعِبَادُ الرَّحْمَنِ الَّذِينَ يَمْشُونَ عَلَى الْأَرْضِ هَوْنًا. That the servants of Allah are those who walk on the earth gently. That means we're maintaining balance. Now, remember what Euripides said. He said that balance is important, and then he said, recognize the powers around you. And first of all, the most or the only power that is around us is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There is no other power. Now you look at this man with this large wave coming towards him. I mean, who can he call on? Only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But we had these storms on Monday night. And you know, I was just thinking before that people are thinking about should we leave the country and what's happening with our investments. And in one night, for 5 minutes, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala shows us, but why are you thinking so far? I can change your circumstance over without even you thinking. While most people were sleeping, houses were flooding. I mean, 2 o'clock in the morning, we were outside my son's house scraping ice out of his gutters. This is how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can change our circumstance. So how is it that we always try to make plans that exclude Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? The only power that operates in the universe is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Everyone else operates with the permission of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So we have to understand that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can intervene and assist in every and any situation. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is our Rabb, is the one who takes care of all our needs without us asking. And that the commands and the guidance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala actually favors upon us. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, وَمَا جَعَلَ عَلَيْكُمْ فِي الدِّينِ مِنْ حَرَجٍ. I have not made any difficulty for you in this deen. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَيُحِلُّ لَهُمُ الطَّيِّبَاتِ وَيُحَرِّمُ عَلَيْهِمُ الْخَبَائِثِ. I have made halal for you, I've legislated what is good for you, and I've forbidden you from what is harmful for you. So these are the commandments of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then we have to understand that the one that controls everything, he only responds to us when we behave according to his guidance. When we are not behaving according to the way Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants us to, then we start to suffer harm. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَمَا أَصَابَكُم مِّن مُّصِيبَةٍ فَبِمَا كَسَبَتْ أَيْدِيكُم. And there's not a single thing that afflicts you except it's what your hands have earned. وَيَعْفُ عَنْ كَثِيرٍ. And most of the wrong actions you do, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is forgiven it. So really, if we want the protection of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then we have to obey Him. And obeying Him means doing what's good for us. And if we obey Him, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, in the Hadith Qudsi, وَمَا تَقَرَبَ إِلَيَّ عَبْدِ بِشَيْءٍ أَحَبَّ إِلَيَّ مِمَّا أَفْرَدْتُهُ عَلَيْهِ. That the servant doesn't come closer to me with anything except what I have made fard upon him. وَلَا يَزَالُ عَبْدِ يَتَقَرَبُ إِلَيَّ بِالنَّوَافِلِ حَتَّى أُحِبَّهُ. And the servant, he continues coming closer to me until I love him. Now listen what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says. He says, فَإِذَا أَحْبَبْتُهُ. And if I love the servant, كُنْتُ سَمْعَهُ الَّذِي يَسْمَعُ بِهِ. I become his ears with which he hears. وَبَصَرَهُ الَّذِي يُبْصِرُ بِهِ. And his eyes with which he sees. وَيَدَهُ الَّتِي يَبْطِشُ بِهَا. And his hands with which he grips. وَرِجْلَهُ الَّتِي يَمْشِي بِهَا. And his feet with which he walks. That means Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala starts to intervene in our affairs. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَلَئِن سَأَلَنِي. And if this servant asks me, لَأُعْطِيَنَّهُ. I will most certainly give him what he asks for. وَلَئِنِ اسْتَعَاذَنِي. And if he seeks my protection, لَأُعِيذَنَّهُ. I will most certainly give him my protection. So this is where our protection and our success lies, in recognizing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So we know nothing beneficial can be accomplished except through Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَمَا تَوْفِيقِ إِلَّا بِاللَّهِ. You have no ability to accomplish anything except with the permission of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But that being said, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has allowed the operation of some other forces which can bring benefit and harm. For example, the angels and the jinn. So good and evil, they exist in the unseen world and they have an effect on our material existence. That's a reality. Okay? And so we have to understand that we have three enemies, main enemies. The main enemy, shaitan. Inna shaitana lakum aduwan, fattakhidhuhu aduwan. Shaitan is your enemy, so take him as such. And then we have enemies amongst the men. Okay? Because there are shayateen amongst men. We say in Qul a'udhu birabbin nas min al-jinnati wan nas. From the evil whisperings from amongst jinn and man. And the biggest enemy is ourselves. And this is why on Qiyamah we will be the only ones responsible for our actions. In fact, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Qur'an that on Qiyamah we're going to say, Rabbana, we're going to say that this shaitan misled us, and he's going to say, Rabbana ma adghaytuhu, I didn't mislead him. وَلَكِنْ كَانَ فِي ضَلَالٍ بَعِيدًا, but he was in distant error. So the other thing we have to understand is that all of these enemies, that means the fellow human being, the shayateen and the jinn, and even our own hearts, are all under the complete control of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So now we're looking at the powers that are around us. So we started talking about balance, and then we said, look at the powers around you, and now we must look at the power within us. And the most powerful thing within us is consciousness or thought. We know from our quantum physics discussion, the double slit experiment, that human consciousness has an effect on existence around it. So human beings have two systems. You have your body, which is a system on its own, which we'll call system 1. Now system 1, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has designed it in such a way that it can function automatically. So while we're sitting here now, you're not thinking about breathing, you're not thinking about digesting your food, you're not thinking about the circulation of your blood. All that is happening for you because the brain is monitoring all of those things. But who are we? We are not the people that we look at in the mirror, because this body we're going to leave behind. We are actually our spiritual selves, or what we will call system 2. And the mind is the nexus between the body and the soul. We can see with our studies on the heart that the heart seems to be connected to something, what science is saying. And what would that something be? It's the heart. This is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, أَفَلَا يَتَدَبَّرُونَ الْقُرْآنَ أَمْ عَلَىٰ قُلُوبٍ أَقْفَالُهَا. Do they not contemplate the Qur'an, or do they have locks on their hearts? Allah didn't say on their brains, but He said on their hearts. So the place of reflection is the spiritual heart. Now, what is the interface between these two systems? The interface, the operating system between the soul and between the body is language. Now, what modern neuroscience has discovered is that when a man is thinking to himself, all the centers of the brain that are activated when you're talking to someone else, all those centers are activated. There is a discussion, there's a dialogue happening. But where is it happening? It's happening inside of us. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَلَقَدْ خَلَقْنَا الْإِنسَانَ وَنَعْلَمُ مَا تُوَسْوِسُ بِهِ نَفْسُهُ. Indeed, we have created man and we know what he whispers to himself. This in itself is a miracle of the Qur'an, this verse. So they're discovering that when a man is thinking, he's actually having a dialogue with himself. So the interface between system 2 and system 1 is language. Now, our experiences in life depends on the meanings we assign to our experiences. Now let me give you 2 examples. Let's say you're driving on the road and somebody cuts you off. Okay? Most people, your first reaction will be to show him some road signals, illegal road signals, or give him a piece of your mind. Okay? That's the one option. Option 2, you can say to yourself, well, maybe this guy's in a hurry, let him go. Same stimulus, 2 different responses. What is the difference? The meaning you assigned to the experience. So let's take another example. You take an example of a man who's an alcoholic. Okay? And he has got 2 sons. The one son grows up to be an alcoholic. The second son doesn't drink and he becomes a very successful businessman. When they ask each son, So they ask son number one, what's the reason for your condition? Why have you become a drunkard? He says, my father. And they ask the second man, and what's the reason for your success? He says, my father. I made sure I didn't want to be like him. Same stimulus, different response. So we control the meanings we assign to experience. And depending on the meanings that we assign, that determines whether we're happy or sad, whether we're positive or negative. Now, Marcus Aurelius is the famous Roman emperor. He says, very little is needed to make a happy life. It is all within yourself and in your way of thinking. Happiness is something that is happening internally. And we'll see, well, we'll discuss just now, when we look at the social media today, everything is external. Now, what Shaitan tries to use is to use system 1 to override system 2. Ash-shaytanu ya'idukum al-faqr. Shaitan, he threatens you with poverty. You see, system 1 is a self-preservation system. It's designed to sustain life, to look after itself. So anything it feels that's going to threaten it, it wants to oppose it. And this is what Shaitan wants to do with us. This is why when it comes to business, sometimes we become lax with halal and haram because we think it's our survival depends on it. For example, the next thing we have to understand is that bad or negative company, it influences our own internal dialogue. The language that's happening now within ourselves can be influenced by the company that we keep, by the places that we visit, by the things we expose ourselves. That's why the Prophet ﷺ says, Al-mar'u ala dini khalilihi. A man is on the religion of his friend. فَلْيَنْظُرْ أَحَدُكُمْ مَنْ يُخَالِمْ. So let each of you look to who he takes as a friend. And this is the danger of the social media. The social media has a direct input into our language and our knowledge resource. In fact, they've discovered now that the most destructive of all the social media sites or apps is Instagram. And what they've discovered is that on Instagram, basically whenever anyone does something that is extraordinary, they post it on Facebook. Now, generally, human beings have always regarded themselves as average. Somebody may have a little more money, but maybe has something less here. But generally, from the time we were in school and you move forward, everyone regards themselves as average. But what the social media is doing, because you're seeing what people are putting, the best of what they're putting, all of a sudden you are no longer average. You are below average. You have a nice house, but you're seeing nicer homes. You got a good car, but you're seeing better cars. You got nice clothing, but you're seeing better clothing. So everything you have is not good enough anymore. And so what this is starting to do now, it's starting to change the language and the discourse within yourself. Now, this is just a verse where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that indeed we created man and we know what he whispers to himself. Now, our language inside is based on two kinds of knowledge. Okay? The first kind of knowledge we have inside of us is experience. So if you take like a sportsman, the more he practices, that experience becomes second nature, he becomes better at what he's doing. You can just look at the child as he grows up, he'll fall at a place once, twice, thrice, but maybe by the fourth time, he doesn't make the same mistake again. Why? He's developing a knowledge base, and then he is forecasting or predicting his actions based on what has happened in the past. So man, one of the ways he acquires knowledge is through experience. The second one, which sets us apart from all other animals, is abstract knowledge. We can actually learn what somebody else has learned and then apply that and make that part of our knowledge. So somebody can go to visit a place and come back and tell you certain things, and then you can act based on what he said to you. But the thing is, abstract knowledge that comes from any human being is filtered by his experiences. It's filtered by his likes and by his dislikes and by the things he exposes him to. So that is never objective reality or objective facts. So the only abstract theory, the only abstract knowledge that we can use to develop our internal language is the Qur'an and the Sunnah. Because that is the language that comes from the one that made us. In fact, the Qur'an is the language and the arguments that system 2 needs to confront system 1, to confront the shayateen, and to confront the other human beings that want to mislead you. This is what the Qur'an is. A book with all the arguments, all the examples that we need to live a successful life. Now, what psychologists say is that while we can understand abstract knowledge, putting it into practice is very difficult. It's not always easy to put that abstract knowledge into practice, and so you need someone to show it to you. And this is why we have the Sunnah. The Sunnah is the demonstration of the theory that's coming from the Qur'an. And that is the only pure truth. And this is why we have to base our foundation and our knowledge and our language inside of us needs to be based on the Qur'an and the Sunnah. Look at our language, you know. Today, if somebody buys a new car, you say, hey, must take care of this car, you know, South Africa is dangerous. He said, don't worry, I'm covered. Okay? He believes in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but what he means when he says I'm covered, he means I'm covered by insurance. So look at the language. He should be covered by who? By Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Alright? But we say we covered. How many times you hear somebody say, you know, if I didn't have a hospital plan, I'll be dead. Who gives cure? Who takes care of you? Who assigns risk? So that means we have a problem with the language. I'm not now saying whether you should or should not. I'm talking of the language. Because what happens is, slowly, all of us, we start to weaken in our practice. And that becomes evident in our language. For those people that attended the lectures on the Salah, all of us, myself included, we know we're not praying today like we were praying 3 or 4 months ago. It's almost as if you feel you need to learn those things again. This is the nature, this is entropy. We're constantly moving to disorder. So this is another famous Greek philosopher. He says, so what is life then? What is this power that you have inside of yourself? He says, it's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. It's the meaning that we assign to things that happen. So a plate breaks in your kitchen, what meaning are you going to assign to it? Is it this maid that's trying to drive me nuts or has some vendetta against me? Or is it Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that gave me an opportunity to raise myself by giving me an opportunity for patience? Or maybe a reason for a husband to buy you a new set of plates. You never know. Assign the meaning and then your experience follows that. Because we know from quantum, your consciousness, it affects your emotions, and your emotions affect your behavior, and then the behavior back to your thoughts. So if we just look like in this country, we start thinking, well, the country is finished. And so we go into a state of negativity, and that affects our behavior. We decide we don't want to invest money in our businesses or certain things. And then what happens is, you don't say, for example, in business, invest in your business, things get quieter. Then you start thinking, the country is really going down. And you become more depressed, and you invest and look after your business less, and you stuck in this negative cycle. Where did it all start? It started inside of you. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala fed you today like He fed you yesterday. And He took care of you today like He took care of you yesterday. So why don't you have the same hope on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for tomorrow like you know He did for you yesterday? What has changed? Alright? Something has changed inside of us. So assigning the correct meaning determines the response. This is a thing articulated by a man called Viktor Frankl. He was a Holocaust survivor. In fact, he was in the concentration camps, and he decided, I'm not just going to waste away here. He started going and serving all people, and he eventually survived. And he gives us a beautiful wisdom. He says, between the stimulus and the response lies a space. In that space is the power to choose. In that space is the power to assign meaning to your experience. You can decide whether the experience is going to be a pleasant one or an unpleasant one. So if you're proactive, then we can assign the correct meaning. This is one of the things about sabr. Patience, you take everything that comes to you and you give it a positive meaning. And if we don't, then what happens to us actually determines our life. The experience determines our response. That means system one is responding. Things are happening and we are responding. So this is a saying by Mario Andretti, is one of the most successful Formula One drivers or racing car drivers. He's one of the only drivers to have won the Formula One championship, the Daytona 500 and the Indianapolis 500. And when they asked him, what's your best advice for other people, he said, don't look at the wall. Now, you know, in American racing, they have walls around the tracks. So he's saying, if you look at the wall, your car goes where your eyes go. And what this means is, if you start to look at things negatively, then your whole viewpoint and your mind and your thoughts start to go negatively. If you keep the company of bad people, that's where things start to go. So if you focus your mind positively, then that's the outcome. And if you focus it negatively, that's going to be your outcome. Now let's get to us as an ummah. In this hadith, the Prophet ﷺ, he says, يُوشِكُ الْأُمَمُ أَن تَدَاعَ عَلَيْكُمْ كَمَا تَدَاعَ الْأَكَلَةُ إِلَى قَصْعَتِهَا. Soon the nations are going to gather against you. And they're going to call one another like an eater calls other people to join him in a meal. So, فَقَالَ قَائِلٌ وَمِنْ قِلَّةٍ نَحْنُ يَوْمَئِذٍ. So this one of the Sahaba, he said to the Prophet ﷺ, will we be few on that day? Prophet ﷺ said, بَلْ أَنْتُمْ يَوْمَئِذٍ كَثِيرٌ. On that day you're going to be many. وَلَكِنَّكُمْ غُثَاءٌ كَغُثَاءِ السَّيْلِ. But you're going to be like the foam, like that dirty foam on flood water. You know that foam, you can push it anyway, it's got no weight. وَلَيَنْزِعَنَّ اللَّهُ مِنْ صُدُورِ عَدُوِّكُمْ الْمَهَابَةَ مِنْكُمْ. Allah will remove from your enemies the fear of you. وَلَيَقْذِفَنَّ اللَّهُ فِي قُلُوبِكُمُ الْوَهْنَ. And Allah will put wahan in your hearts. So, Sahabi, فَقَالَ قَائِلٌ وَمَا الْوَهْنُ يَا رَسُولَ اللَّهِ. So the Sahabi said, what is this wahan? And the Prophet ﷺ said, حُبُّ الدُّنْيَا, that you love this world, وَكَرَاهِيَةُ الْمَوْتِ, and you dislike death. Now, normally we just stop there with this hadith and we say, yeah, okay, this guy loves the dunya and he is afraid to die, and the thing ends there. But what this hadith is giving out to us is that something has changed in the hearts of the believers. And on account of the hearts changing, the entire physical circumstance has changed. So if we want to change this physical circumstance, the only way to change it is by going back and changing the heart. So, two elements of the heart we see from this thing. The first is love and attachment to materialism. Why? Because we think happiness is in having things. Now understand, owning things is not a bad thing. But if you understand it's a gift from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you pay Him His due and His thanks, and you don't use it in His disobedience, alhamdulillah, no problem. But it's when we forget Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and we make that the objective that it becomes a problem. And the second thing is that we have a weak or non-existent relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is why we dislike death. So we love dunya because we think that's happiness, and we dislike death because we have not been doing what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has asked us to do, and we're not ready to meet Him. So what causes this destruction or the sinking of the heart? It's that the knowledge of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is corrupted. We have lost sight of the fact that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala controls everything and everything is in His hands. There's nothing that we can accomplish without Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There is no good and there is no protection except with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If we think that there's anything else that can look after and protect us, our internal dialogue is corrupted. And second thing, the language of the heart is become corrupted because of the knowledge. So the Qur'an contains all the meanings of life. And this is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَلَقَدْ صَرَفْنَا فِي هَذَا الْقُرْآنِ لِلنَّاسِ مِنْ كُلِّ مَثَلٍ. We have given you every example, every argument, every meaning you need from life is inside of this Qur'an. In other words, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَنَزَّلْنَا عَلَيْكَ الْقُرْآنَ تِبْيَانًا لِكُلِّ شَيْءٍ. We have revealed this Qur'an as an explanation of everything for you. That means whatever this heart needs in dealing with the world is inside this book. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, now let's look just in terms of what we've heard, let's look at this verse now. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, يَا أَيُّهَا النَّاسِ, O mankind, قَدْ جَاءَتْكُمْ مَوْعِظَةٌ مِّن رَبِّكُمْ. A good advice has come to you from who? From your Rabb. Who's the Rabb? The one that takes care of all your needs without you asking. And the one that owns and is sustaining everything. The one that has no need and is fulfilling all your need is giving you what? A good advice. So what is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala saying? That this book is containing what you need. وَشِفَاءٌ لِمَا فِي الصُّدُورِ. This is what is going to cure your heart. وَهُدًى, and it's going to show you how to implement this shifa. وَرَحْمَةٌ لِلْمُؤْمِنِينَ, and it's the mercy, it's that unseen assistance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that's going to assist you through your life. So when we understand this, motivational theorists, they say people basically fall into two categories: parkers and navigators. And we should decide into which group we fall. Parkers, it means static people, they see difficulty as challenges. Everything is a problem. You can't find anything positive with them. But navigators, they see difficulties as opportunities. Parkers, they're driven by perspiration. And navigators by inspiration. They're driven by their hearts. They're always finding the brighter side of things. And thirdly, parkers, they expect things around them to change. Always complaining, and you want somebody or something to happen around you without your intervention. And navigators, they're always changing what is within themselves to meet the circumstances around them. So now that we have these tools, what these are tools that we need to understand ourselves, to understand Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and then to live successful lives. And so the Fatiha, this is what it is. The A'udhu and the Bismillah and the Fatiha is designed to move us towards balance, to explain to us, to give us the language about how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala controls everything, and to show us how we can benefit ourselves by using these tools. So the Fatiha is something we read every day and we take it for granted, but we need to start looking at it differently. This is why Marcel Proust, he says, the real voyage of discovery consists not in seeking new lands, but seeing with new eyes. We need to look at the A'udhu, and we need to look at the Bismillah, and we need to look at the Fatiha with new eyes. This is not just something we recite at ceremonies. Why? Because there is a depth in the Fatiha. Sayyidina Ali, he says, if I were to write about the Fatiha, the writings would overburden 70 camels with the weight of the virtues of the Fatiha. Hassan al-Basri, he says, Allah revealed more than 120 books. He condensed those 120 books into 4 books. The Qur'an, the Torah, the Zabur, and the Injil. And then he took those 4 books and he condensed it into the Mufassilat, the last 4 paras of the Qur'an. And then he took all of those and he condensed it into the Fatiha. And then he says, some say, and Allah took the Fatiha and he condensed it into إِيَّاكَ نَعْبُدُ وَإِيَّاكَ نَسْتَعِينُ. But if we start to unpack the Fatiha, we have to be unpacking the entire Qur'an. So in the Fatiha is all the arguments and all the meanings and the language that we need to live successfully. So let's just look at the names of the Fatiha. The first name is the Fatiha. Why? Because it's the opening. It's the first surah in the Qur'an. It's called Qur'an and Kitab because it's the first surah in the Qur'an, according to Imam Bukhari, and we start salah with it. According to Imam Tabari, it's called Qur'an because it's the summary of the entire Qur'an. And the Arabs, they call the most important thing the So when they say Qur'an, it means the most important portion of the Qur'an. It's called Sab'ul Mathani, meaning the 7 oft repeated verses, because we recite it 17 times. So if we understand entropy, we're constantly sliding backwards. The Fatiha is designed to constantly move us forwards. This is why we have to recite it minimum 17 times a day. It's called Alhamd. In fact, the first word of the Qur'an is the essence of our existence, Alhamd. That every single praise is due to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's called the Salah because in the hadith, the Prophet says that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, قَسَّمْتُ الصَّلَاةَ بَيْنِي وَبَيْنَ عَبْدِي. I divided the Salah, meaning the Fatiha, between me and my servant. إِذَا قَالَ عَبْدِي الْحَمْدُ لِلَّهِ رَبِّ الْعَالَمِينَ قَالَ اللَّهُ تَعَالَى حَمَّدَنِي عَبْدِي. When we say Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, my servant is praised me. وَإِذَا قَالَ الرَّحْمَنُ الرَّحِيمُ, then Allah says, أَثْنَى عَلَيَّ عَبْدِي. My servant is praised me. When you say Maliki Yawmiddin, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, مَجَّدَنِي عَبْدِي. And when you say إِيَّاكَ نَعْبُدُ وَإِيَّاكَ نَسْتَعِينُ, Allah says, هَذَا بَيْنِي وَبَيْنَ عَبْدِي وَلِعَبْدِي مَا سَأَلَ. This is between me and my servant. He can now have whatever he wants. Then it's called Ash-Shifa, because the Prophet ﷺ said it's a cure for every poison, in hadith narrated by Darimi. And then it's called Al-Ruqya, because of the hadith in Bukhari of the Sahabi that healed a man that was bitten by the scorpion by reciting the Fatiha 7 times and blowing on him. Now, what is making these things work? It's your belief, it's your thoughts. Remember we did the placebo effect? When you believe something can benefit you, the body starts to respond accordingly. And when you believe something will not benefit you, it's called the nocebo effect, then it won't benefit you. So what we're doing when looking at the Fatiha, we're building up our knowledge in our language, and we have to start believing with certainty the power of the A'udhu, the power of the Bismillah, and the power of the Fatiha. It's called Al-Wafiyah, because it cannot be summarized further. It's the condensation of all wisdom and knowledge that has been handed down to man in his entire existence. It's called Al-Kafiyah, the sufficer, because the Prophet ﷺ said, this suffices for everything and nothing can suffice for it. It is the most comprehensive and condensed gift given to us by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's called Al-Kanz, the treasure, Ad-Du'a, the prayer, Al-Waqiyah, the protection, and Ash-Shukr, the gratitude. So this is the status of Surah Al-Fatiha. Just some of the virtues. One of the virtues is that Allah called it the Salah. The fact that the Prophet ﷺ said the likes of this surah has not been revealed in any of the books. That this is the greatest surah in the Qur'an according to Imam Bukhari. And the Prophet ﷺ was sitting with Jibreel one day and they heard a sound, and Jibreel said, today 2 lights have descended from the heavens from a door that has never been opened before. And those 2 lights are Surah Al-Fatiha and the last 2 verses of Surah Al-Baqarah, Amana Rasulu, until the end. And then the Prophet ﷺ said, it's the noblest and the most noble and excellent part of the Quran. Now, if this is so valuable, then the first thing we need to do before we get to this book is what? Is to seek a refuge against the shaitan. This is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us. فَإِذَا قَرَأْتَ الْقُرْآنَ فَاسْتَعِذْ بِاللَّهِ مِنَ الشَّيْطَانِ الرَّجِيمِ. And when you recite the Quran, seek a refuge from the shaitan. Why? So it doesn't corrupt your knowledge and your language system. Now Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He told us to seek a refuge against shaitan because he is our enemy. We must factor that into our understanding of the world. And this is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَإِمَّا يَنْزَغَنَّكَ مِنَ الشَّيْطَانِ نَزْغٌ. If an evil prompting comes to you from the shaitan, فَاسْتَعِذْ بِاللَّهِ. Seek the protection of Allah. إِنَّهُ سَمِيعٌ عَلِيمٌ. Allah is all hearing and all knowing. Now, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, according to Ibn al-Jawzi, commanded us to seek refuge because he said we should ponder on the fact that it was shaitan that caused our father Adam to be removed from Jannah to the abode of disgrace and difficulty, and if we follow him, that's what's going to happen. We will not make it to Jannah and we will suffer humility and difficulty. Disgrace and difficulty. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, indeed shaitan is an enemy to you, so take him as an enemy. Now, isti'adha, according to Ibn al-Qayyim, it means to flee from that which you fear to that which will protect you. So what that means is whenever you feel something coming over your heart, the first words that should come out of your mouth, A'udhu Billah. This is where we should be rushing to. Don't underestimate the power of these words. Now, A'udhu comes from the word other in Arabic. And there's two opinions on the meaning of the word other. Okay? So, other, its verbal noun is awwad. And for the Arabs, they use this word awwad if a tree was shaded. A house rather was shaded by a tree. So let me give you an example. If you're living in the desert and there's no shade, can you imagine if you have a tree over your house? You're like the best guy in the desert, right? This is what awwad is. This is the imagery Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants us to get when you take the a'udhu. When you say a'udhu billah, this is what's happening. You are covering yourself with the protection of the one that controls everything in the universe. The second thing is that when meat stuck to a bone, the Arabs called it awwad. So you know some meat, like people that like ribs, it's always difficult to get the meat off the bone. This is what awwad meant for the Arabs. Meat that stuck to the bone. And so what we're getting from this is that we should be sticking to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala so closely, just like a child sticks to his father when he's afraid. So when we say A'udhu Billah, we're actually saying we're sticking closely to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala because we are in need of His protection. Now, when I say, what is A'udhu Billah? The first thing you're going to say to me, you're going to say, I seek a refuge in Allah. I'm asking Allah for protection. But in Arabic, when you want to say, I'm seeking, then you see in this verse, it says, Astaghfirullah. That's the form you would say. So Astaghfirullah means I'm asking Allah for forgiveness. If we were asking Allah to protect us, we would say Asta'idhu Billah. I'm seeking the protection of Allah. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala taught us to say A'udhu Billah, meaning I'm taking the protection of Allah. So you know, it's like somebody, you got a car, the person says to you, look here, here's the keys. If you need it, don't ask, just take it. So whenever you want it, take it. So this is the treasure Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying, here's the thing, if you need it, just take it. The protection is yours. And so the Prophet ﷺ, he said to Abu Dharr to seek refuge against the Satans amongst jinn and men. Abu Dharr said, are there shayateen amongst men? The Prophet ﷺ said, yes. So now we know A'udhu Billah is functioning in the seen world and in the unseen world. Alright, so remember we're talking of the powers around us. A'udhu is a protection for those evil forces around us. Now let's look at the next hadith. Two men abused each other in front of the Prophet ﷺ. One of them became angry, and his anger became so intense that his face became swollen and changed. His veins were popping out. The Prophet ﷺ said, I know a word, the saying of which will cause him to relax if he says it. And what's that word? A'udhu Billahi minash shaitanir rajim. So A'udhu Billah will also calm down the evil that's happening inside of yourself. So when we looked, remember in the first saying, we said the powers around you. We now know A'udhu Billah can protect you from the shaitan, from other men, and even from the evil inside of yourself. This is the comprehensiveness of this protection. Now shaitan, so you're saying A'udhu Billah minash shaitanir rajim. From shaitan. Shaitan is derived from the word shatana, which means distant. Distance because he is far from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala because of his disobedience. Another meaning of shatana is because he was created from fire, from heat. And this was the cause of his arrogance. In fact, Imam Shinqiti, he says this is the beginning of racism. When you see something in yourself that you think makes you better than someone else, then understand who you're becoming like. Because when he saw Adam, he said, Ana khayrun minhu, I'm better than him. So when you see yourself as better than anyone else, you have to understand where you're heading, which path you're heading down. And so furthermore, he disobeyed a clear command, and this is why he was rejected. So if we reject the clear commands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we will suffer the same fate. We will also be rejected. So according to Ibn al-Qayyim, it was the disobedience of shaitan, and this is the danger of disobedience, which led him from the company of the angels to being cursed. From being close to being distant. Remember, he was so close that he reached the realm of the angels. From Allah's mercy to Allah's anger. Now, as I'm saying this, don't think about shaitan. We should be thinking about us. That if we're not doing what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants, then this is what's going to happen to us. From being beautiful to being ugly. From being in paradise to eternal hell. From being a believer to being a disbeliever. From being the friend of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to being his enemy. From being one of ibadah to being one of kufr. From belief to disbelief. From being one of honor to one despised, humiliated, outcast, and worthless. Now, what caused this fall from disgrace? Disobeying the commands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It is the root of evil and suffering in the world. It is what corrupts the hearts. And one of the things that will safeguard us and protect us from this is da'wah. So we seek, Allahumma arina haqqa haqqan warzuqna tiba'a. Oh Allah, show us the truth as truth and give us the ability to follow it. Wa arina al-batila batilan warzuqna ijtinaba. And show us falsehood as falsehood and give us the ability to stay away from it. Otherwise, we will end up like shaitan. Now the next powerful thing, the next tool. So if we have to look at A'udhu Billah, A'udhu Billah is actually the tool that is almost stopping imbalance. Remember we said from the start, you're moving naturally to imbalance. A'udhu Billah is what stops us. And so if the world is something that's designed, that's moving naturally backwards, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us something that will take us naturally forwards. And what is this? This is the Bismillah. So this statement that we take so lightly, let's see what importance has been assigned to it by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So according to Ibn al-Qayyim, this is the secret to attaining anything of worth in this world. Our Salaf have said that the two things that this ummah have been given, that no other was given, are the Fatiha and the Bismillah. Two things that no people before us have been given. The Fatiha and the Bismillah. Now, why is it so important? Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَإِن مِّن شَيْءٍ إِلَّا عِنْدَنَا خَزَائِنُهُ. That there's not a single thing except the stores thereof are with us. So if you want anything, you can only get it from the one that possesses it. Because Ibn al-Qayyim, he says, this is a great treasure. Because a thing can only be sought from the one that possesses it. Seeking a thing from other than the one that possesses it or has authority over it is a futile exercise. If you go to Mercedes-Benz and you want a BMW, it's useless. If you go to Samsung and you want an Apple phone, it's not possible. If you want a loaf of bread and you go to a clothing shop, it won't. So if you want something, the only way to get it is from the one that possesses it. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَأَنَّ إِلَىٰ رَبِّكَ الْمُنْتَهَى. And to your Lord is the return of everything. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is in control of everything. So this, like A'udhu, is another treasure, which indicates that anything that one desires that is not connected to Allah is bound to disappear. With entropy, it will be gone. And will bring one nothing but distress and punishment. So what we have to understand is that everything that is sought should be sought with Bismillah. Anything we want, the first thing we should be saying is Bismillah. If we take even a seat without remembering Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, without saying Bismillah, we've incurred a loss upon ourselves. And the only things which we can seek are the ones that we can say Bismillah over. This is like a mufti. You don't have to ask many questions. You say, is smoking halal or haram? You say, can you say Bismillah before you smoke a cigarette? No, you can't. So you already know it's haram. Can I say Bismillah and go to the shabin or the nightclub? No, you can't. So you can't do it. Can I say Bismillah and gamble? No, you can't. Can I say Bismillah and go and have a fight with someone? You can't. Can I say Bismillah and associate with someone that is haram for me? No, you can't. So just realizing what you can and can't say Bismillah for gives you an indication of what you can and can't do. So according to Ibn al-Qayyim, the purpose of Bismillah is it brings Allah to mind before one does the action, mindfulness. It prevents one from doing evil actions. If you can't say Bismillah, you can't do it. If you take the name, you will attain Allah's support and assistance in that action. It reminds one of the purpose and the source of the fulfillment of that need. You see, the language changes because you now understand who the source is. You won't be like someone says, I'm covered. You say Bismillah, you know who the source is. And that the source of blessings for that action and its final destination lies with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So, now listen to the cosmic effect of Bismillah. Jabir radiallahu anhu reports that when Bismillah was revealed, he says the clouds gave way by moving to the east. The winds ceased blowing. The oceans became calm. The creatures prepared themselves to listen. The shayateen got pelted with fire from the heavens. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, swearing an oath by His honor, declared, anyone who says this name of mine upon anything, I will surely impart barakah in that thing. What better promise do we want than this promise from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? So, the Prophet ﷺ, he says that when one curses shaitan, he becomes proud and he grows in stature. But when one takes the name of Allah, when he says Bismillah, he becomes humiliated and he grows small until he ends up the size of a fly. This is how powerful an effect Bismillah has. Ibn Mas'ud radiallahu anhu, he says, whoever wishes to be saved from the 19 angels of hellfire, then let him recite Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. So, sorry, let me go back. In this hadith, we discussed this before, that when the Sahabi came to the Prophet ﷺ and complained about pain, the Prophet ﷺ said, say Bismillah 3 times. And then, أعوذ بعزة الله وقدرته من شر ما أجد وأحذره 7 times. And the Sahabi says that the pain left me. So, the Prophet ﷺ says, now remember we said one of the things is the jinn. And if jinn contaminate our language or our filters, then what starts to happen in our lives? We start to see their hand in everything. All of a sudden, we cannot function in this world because we feel we have been overwhelmed. But look at the Prophet ﷺ says the screen between the jinn and the nakedness of the children of Adam when they go to the bathroom is to say Bismillah. This is so powerful that it even blinds the devils. So Jabir radiallahu anhu, again he says, if a man remembers Allah when he enters his house and when he takes food, then the jinn can't enter that house. They say no place to stay tonight and no food. And if he doesn't remember Allah when he enters his house, then the shaitan, the jinn, they can enter and say, I found a place to spend the night. And if he doesn't remember Allah as he takes his food, the shaitan says, I found a place to stay and I have food to eat. So this is the Bismillah. It starts with the ba. And in Arabic, the word ba has about 20 meanings. But 2 are important for us. The first one is called ba al-musahaba, and the second one ba al-isti'ana. Ba al-musahaba means the ba of companionship, meaning with the name of Allah, I'm doing this action. Ba al-isti'ana means I'm seeking the help. So when we say Bismillah, that ba actually means with Allah next to me and with His help, I'm trying to do this action. So Bismillah, the other thing to understand, it's not a complete statement. If I say to you, in the house, it doesn't make sense. I either have to say someone is in the house, or in the house there's food. If I add something before or after, it has meaning. So Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, it needs something added before or after. So Bismillah, I'm getting in the car. Or I'm getting in the car, Bismillah. It's designed for us to put whatever action we're doing before or behind it. Now, according to Noman Ali Khan, he says, after the ba, remember we get ism. He said, ism comes from the word wasama in Arabic, which means a distinct quality of beauty. Now remember, after ism follows Allah, so it's giving you an indication of the name of Allah. That is, there's a distinct quality of beauty. And a second opinion, he says that it comes from the word high and elevated, because this is the name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, beautiful, high and elevated. The word Allah, according to Ibn al-Qayyim, comes from the word Allah. So Allah means the thing that is most beloved in our hearts. This is what the word Allah should be meaning for us. So when we say Bismillah, we're saying with the beautiful, elevated, and most valuable thing in our heart. You know, the other thing that we need to take note is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَلِلَّهِ الْأَسْمَاءُ الْحُسْنَى. Allah has the most beautiful names. But Allah is not a part of the other names of Allah. Rahman is a part of the names of Allah, but Allah is unique. This name Allah is unique. It's not a part of any other name. It contains all the other names of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala are contained in the word Allah. So when you use the word Allah, you are using the most beautiful and distinct name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So this, a natural consequence of Bismillah is ihsan. Because if you calling for the help of the one who's most valuable to your heart, can you do something evil or ugly? You can only do something beautiful. Rahman, now we're coming to the end. Bismillah ar-Rahman. Rahman is on the scale. In Arabic, fa'alan means that the rahmah of Allah fills the entire universe. It means that Allah's mercy is encompassing everything. The animals, the believers, the disbelievers, everything is encompassed by the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is قُلِ ادْعُوا اللَّهَ أَوْ ادْعُوا الرَّحْمَنَ أَيَّمَّا تَدْعُوا فَلَهُ الْأَسْمَاءُ الْحُسْنَى. Call him by Allah or call him by Ar-Rahman, whatever you call him, for him is the most beautiful names. And lastly, Ar-Rahim. Now, Rahim in Arabic is on the scale of fa'il, which means something that's happening continuously. So according to Ibn al-Qayyim, Allah uses Rahman to demonstrate his essence. So Rahman is giving you an idea of who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is. He is the most merciful. But Rahim is for the operation of that mercy. That means when the fluid is moistening your eye, that's from this name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Ar-Rahim. The fact that Allah put the liquid in your eye is from his quality of being a Rahman. And when it is moistening the eye, that is from the quality of Allah being Rahim. Rahman can refer only to Allah, but Rahim can also refer to human beings, because the Prophet Allah says in the Quran about the Prophet وَبِالْمُؤْمِنِينَ رَؤُوفٌ رَحِيمٌ. And so for general invocation, we use the word Rahman, but for Rahim, according to Imam Tabari, is irada shar'iyya, that when you follow the Sharia of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you become, you qualify for this quality of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Rahim, because Allah says, وَكَانَ بِالْمُؤْمِنِينَ رَحِيمًا. If you want to be of those that receive this quality of Rahim, you have to be from amongst the mu'minun. You have to be a part of this club. So then we should understand that in order to receive this quality of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we should make our actions sincere. We have to be careful in what we do. And if we now truly realize with the Bismillah that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us or blessed us with these tools to know who He is and submit to Him, that Allah is most merciful and He has introduced Himself to us as such. He said that His mercy overcomes His anger. What will be the next word that follows? When you understand these two treasures that have been given to us, the only next thing you can say is Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen for this treasure. So just lastly, I gave out those few pages. We've done this before, but it's so beautiful we have to do it again, inshallah. This is the end. This is what Ibn al-Qayyim says about the Bismillah. Now look at what insight Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave this man. He says this name is not mentioned over something paltry, over something little, except it becomes plentiful. Nor at the time of fear, except that it removes it. Nor at the time of hardship, except that it lifts it. Nor at the time of distress and worry, except that it alleviates it. Nor at the time of constraint, except that it liberates it. No weak creature depends upon it, except that it grants him strength. No one undergoing humiliation, except it grants him honor. No one who is poor, except that it leads him to richness. No one who is left alone, except that it grants him comfort. No one who is overcome, except that it aids him and supports him. No one in a state of dire need, except that it lifts his need. No one who is run astray, except that it throws him back. It is the name through which hardship is removed, through which blessings descend, through which supplications are answered, through which the foot does not slip, through which evil is repressed and good is promoted. It is the name through which the heavens and earth stand, because of which the heavenly scripture descended, the messengers were sent, the legal laws legislated, the legal punishments established, and jihad legislated. Through this name is the creation divided into the felicitous, the happy and the wretched. And through it does the undeniable reality come to pass and the final convulsion occur. Because of it are the scales erected, the path laid out, and the paradise and hell made ready. Through it is the Lord of the worlds worshipped and praised, and to establish its rights were the messengers sent. It is about it that the questions will be asked in the grave and on the day of judgment. Because of it did the dispute arise, that is between men and jinn, and to it one goes for judgment. Love and hate is based on it. Felicitous or happy is one who has come to know it and established its rights. Wretched is one who is ignorant of it and leaves off its right. It is the core of creation and the command, and through it do both stand and become firm, and to it do they end. So why has Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala given us this? So we become more mindful and we can start living from the heart, so that our knowledge can be based on pure truth, which is the Qur'an and the Sunnah. That our language can be based from the heart and on sound knowledge, and that the meanings we assign in life can be ones that bring about balance and harmony. And finally, that we can achieve and receive and be favored with divine intervention in all our affairs. أقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله لي ولكم ولسائر المسلمين فاستغفروا إنه هو الغفور الرحيم. Any questions?